Right now, the February 2026 winter storm is officially over, but the crisis in the United States is not. As of this morning, February 1st, at least 119 people are confirmed dead across more than 20 states. That number continues to rise. 57,000 customers in Tennessee alone are still sitting in the dark, nearly a week after ice brought down power lines. In Louisiana, utility crews are telling families that full restoration may not come until the end of this weekend. And across New York, Mississippi, Kentucky, and a dozen other states, emergency shelters remain open because thousands of people still cannot return to homes that have no heat, no light, and no running water. This was not one storm. This was a continental-scale weather disaster that stretched from the Mexico border to the Canadian Maritimes, when affecting 34 states and placing 230 million people under winter weather alerts. At its peak, more than 1 million customers lost power. Over 20,000 flights were canceled in 4 days. And in New York City, officials found 10 people dead outdoors from hypothermia in just 48 hours. Here is the important part. Even as cleanup continues from Winter Storm Fern, another dangerous system is already forming off the East Coast. Forecasters are calling it a bomb cyclone. It is expected to bring heavy snow, blizzard conditions, and hurricane-force winds to parts of North Carolina, Virginia, and the Mid-Atlantic on this very day, February 1st. The communities that are still recovering from one storm are about to face another. This is the story of how Winter Storm Fern became one of the deadliest winter events in recent U.S. history, why the systems designed to protect us failed, and what the next 48 hours may bring. In the maps and satellite loops, you can trace Winter Storm Fern back to January 22nd, when a cold core low began spinning over the Pacific Ocean near the Baja California Peninsula. Meteorologists had been watching for days as the polar vortex, normally locked over northern Canada and Alaska, stretched southward like a rubber band being pulled too far. That elongation allowed frigid Arctic air to spill into the central United States. At the same time, moisture was streaming in from two directions, off the coast of California and northward from the Gulf of Mexico. By January 23rd, the system had crossed the Rocky Mountains and begun organizing over the Great Plains. A broad trough of low pressure coalesced over the region. Ash and winter precipitation began spreading eastward. Initially, it was sleet and freezing rain across northern Texas, southern Oklahoma, and Arkansas. But as the moisture increased, snowfall rates climbed to 1 inch per hour in some locations. By the early hours of January 24th, snow was falling heavily across central Arkansas. The National Weather Service began issuing storm summary bulletins that afternoon. What made Winter Storm Fern extraordinary was its scale. At one point, winter weather alerts stretched nearly 2,000 miles, from the Four Corners region of the Southwest all the way to the coast of Maine. More than 230 million people were under some form of winter storm warning, winter weather advisory, or ice storm warning. That is roughly 2/3 of the entire U.S. population. On January 25th, the storm underwent what meteorologists call Miller B cyclogenesis. A new low-pressure center formed off the southeast coast and began rapidly intensifying as it moved northward toward New England. The barometric pressure dropped to 958 millibars. Wind gusts reached 93 miles per hour in Tennessee, and as the system pulled cold air in behind it, temperatures plunged. Siegel, Minnesota recorded minus 43 degrees Fahrenheit. Grand Rapids, Michigan hit minus 19, the coldest temperature there since 1994. More than 24 cold temperature records fell across the country. By the time the storm finally weakened on January 27th, it had left a trail of destruction unlike anything the United States has seen in years. At least 119 people had lost their lives. More than 1 million customers lost power, concentrated primarily in the south, where a crippling ice storm caused trees and power lines to snap under the weight. Snowfall totals ranged from 1 to 2 feet across a swath stretching from Texas to Maine. New York City's Central Park recorded 11.4 inches, a daily record for January 25th. Boston's Logan Airport saw 23.2 inches, the 8th highest snowfall on record for the city. And Toronto, Canada recorded 46 centimeters in a single day, the largest one-day snowfall since records began there in 1937. The transportation system collapsed. On January 25th alone, More than 11,000 flights were canceled. The worst single day for flight cancellations since March 30th, 2020, at the height of the COVID-19 pandemic. Over 4 days, the total reached more than 20,000 canceled flights. Hartsfield-Jackson Atlanta International Airport canceled over 1,000 flights. LaGuardia Airport in New York shut down entirely for several hours. Amtrak canceled dozens of trains, and highways across the country became death traps. Virginia State Police responded to 440 crashes in 48 hours. 3 young boys in Texas, ages 6, 8, and 9, fell through ice on a pond and drowned. 2 teenage girls in Frisco, Texas were killed while being pulled on a sled behind a car when they struck a tree. By mid-morning on January 26, more than half of the contiguous United States was covered in snow. Satellite images showed a blanket of white stretching from the Rockies to the Atlantic, and the coldest air was still settling in. Walk into one of the emergency shelters, still open tonight in Nashville, Tennessee, or Jackson, Mississippi. Gym floors are lined with cots and folded blankets. Children play quietly with donated toys while their parents huddle around extension cords, trying to charge phones to check on relatives or see when the power might come back on. Volunteers from the American Red Cross move between rows, handing out bottled water and prepackaged meals. Outside, the temperature is still below freezing. Inside, families who have been here for 5, 6, even 7 nights are waiting for 2 things that still have not fully returned: heat and certainty. The American Red Cross reports that more than 20,000 blood donations were lost because donation centers across affected states had to close during the storm. That blood shortage is now stretching hospital capacity in regions that were already operating on thin margins. According to the Red Cross, when blood supplies have dropped significantly, and some medical procedures are being delayed because hospitals do not have enough units on hand. The storm did not just cut power lines, it severed supply chains that keep people alive. In Mississippi, the state hardest hit by fatalities, Governor Tate Reeves confirmed 16 deaths as of January 30th. 2 people died when a tree fell on a mobile home in Iuka during the height of the storm. Almost 300,000 customers lost power in Mississippi alone, many in rural areas where crews have struggled to reach downed lines buried under ice and fallen trees. Officials estimate that some residents may not have power restored for another week. New York, with 15 confirmed deaths, became a focal point of the crisis. In New York City, officials found 10 people dead outdoors from hypothermia. One of them was a 60-year-old retired New York State police officer who died while attempting to shovel snow near a church in Floral Park. Central Park's 11.4 inches of snow set a daily record for January 25th, and the storm forced the closure of public schools and a shift to remote learning. LaGuardia Airport closed for hours. NJ Transit and NYC Ferry suspended service. Upstate, cities like Albany, Binghamton, and Rochester saw record snowfall for the date, and both Ulster County and Dutchess County implemented travel bans. Tennessee reported 13 deaths and suffered some of the worst infrastructure damage of any state. Nashville recorded 1.92 inches of precipitation on January 24th, much of it freezing rain. The result was the worst ice storm the region has seen in decades. And our Nashville Electric Service reported 230,000 outages at the peak, the highest number in the company's history. As of this morning, February 1st, more than 50,000 customers in the Nashville area are still without power. Utility CEO Philip May told residents that full restoration may not happen until this weekend at the earliest. Families are waiting, workers are waiting, and the temperature is still dangerously cold. Here is the important part. Louisiana, a state that rarely sees prolonged ice storms, has extended its statewide emergency order as 9 people have died and tens of thousands remain without electricity. 5 of those deaths were caused by hypothermia. 2 others resulted from carbon monoxide poisoning after families used generators indoors to stay warm. Governor Jeff Landry toured the hardest-hit parishes by helicopter on January 27th to assess the damage. In Shreveport, the temperature dropped to 17 degrees Fahrenheit. Interstate 20 suffered multi-day backups that lasted into the end of the week, and the company Entergy, which services much of the state, has told more than 51,000 customers that they may not see power return until January 31st or later. For many, that deadline has already passed. Meanwhile, federal and state resources are mobilizing for the next storm. FEMA has pre-positioned 250,000 meals, 400,000 liters of water, and 30 generators at staging areas. 28 urban search and rescue teams remain on standby. The Ohio Department of Transportation has mobilized 1,500 snowplows. Airlines including American, Delta, and United have issued flexible rebooking policies for passengers traveling through the Mid-Atlantic and Southeast. And officials in North Carolina, Virginia, Maryland, and Delaware are warning residents that the bomb cyclone now approaching the coast could bring 8 to 12 inches of snow, blizzard conditions, and significant coastal flooding. They are waiting for two things that still have not fully returned: heat and certainty. And now another storm is coming. When you step back from the day-to-day updates, Winter Storm Fern exposes three critical weaknesses in the systems that are supposed to keep Americans safe during extreme weather. The first is the power grid, especially in the South. According to utility officials and infrastructure analysts, many of the power lines that failed during the ice storm in Tennessee, Mississippi, and Louisiana are decades old. Trees that should have been trimmed years ago stood too close to transmission lines. When ice accumulated to 1 inch thick in some areas, the weight became too much. Branches snapped, lines came down, and in rural areas where crews had to navigate icy roads and difficult terrain, restoration has taken nearly a week. Nashville Electric Service recorded the highest number of simultaneous outages in its history. The question utility companies now face is whether to invest billions of dollars in undergrounding power lines or hardening above-ground infrastructure, knowing that storms like this may become more frequent. The second weakness is transportation choke points. On January 25th, more than 11,000 flights were canceled in a single day. Major hub airports like Atlanta, Dallas-Fort Worth, and LaGuardia became bottlenecks that rippled across the entire national aviation system. Passengers were stranded for days, and on the ground, highways like Interstate 20 in Louisiana and Interstate 95 in Virginia became parking lots as accidents and icy conditions made travel nearly impossible. The interconnectedness of modern transportation means that when one region shuts down, the effects cascade nationwide. The third weakness is the fragility of supply chains that most people never think about until they break. The American Red Cross lost more than 20,000 blood donations because weather forced the cancellation of blood drives. Hospitals that were already operating on limited supplies now face critical shortages. Grocery stores in affected areas saw shelves emptied as residents stocked up before the storm. Firewood sold out across Louisiana as families prepared for extended power outages. And emergency shelters, many of which are staffed by volunteers, have been operating at near capacity for a week. There is also a deeper climate signal. A warmer atmosphere can hold more moisture. That means when cold air and storm systems do line up, the result can be heavier snow, more intense ice storms, and larger swings between unseasonable warmth and dangerous Arctic outbreaks. Scientists have noted that while individual winter storms cannot be directly attributed to climate change, the pattern of more extreme precipitation events, both in summer and winter, is consistent with long-term climate projections. The polar vortex disruptions that allowed Arctic air to plunge so far south are also being studied as a potential consequence of warming in the Arctic, which may weaken the jet stream and allow cold air to spill southward more easily. The question now is not only how to rebuild, but how to make sure the next Winter Storm Fern does not push the same systems even closer to the breaking point. Some states are already responding. Tennessee is reviewing its grid infrastructure. Mississippi is fast-tracking emergency management reforms, and federal officials are discussing whether FEMA's pre-positioning strategy needs to be expanded for future winter events. But those are long-term solutions. Right now, on February 1st, 2026, communities are bracing for another storm. Tonight, Winter Storm Fern is fading from the maps. And Winter Storm Gianna, the bomb cyclone, is still approaching the East Coast. Forecasters are warning that North Carolina could see some of the heaviest snow in decades. Coastal flooding is expected from Virginia to Massachusetts, and the communities that just finished digging out from one storm are preparing to do it all over again. But for millions of people, this winter will be remembered not by storm names, but by nights spent in cold houses, by long lines at shelters, and by the quiet fear of wondering what happens if the lights go out again. It will also be remembered by resilience. Neighbors have been running extension cords across yards to share generators. Volunteers have been driving hours through dangerous conditions to staff emergency shelters. Line crews have been working 16-hour shifts in freezing rain to restore power. Hospital staff have been stretching dwindling blood supplies to keep surgeries on schedule. And families who have lost loved ones are finding ways to hold each other up. We will keep tracking both the science and the human stories as this historic winter continues to unfold. If you found this update useful, consider sharing it, subscribing, and letting us know how these storms are affecting you and your family. And as always, stay safe, stay informed, and stay prepared. How do you think your community should change after what this winter has revealed?